In. Thank you, Elise. This is our final Management Consulting Week event. Super happy to have you here. It will be a great one to end. If you have been in some of the other events, we've been doing some boot camp giveaways. This is an awesome chance, one last chance to get a free boot camp. This is valued over like $2,100 or something, and we're giving away it for free tonight. So make sure to apply for that. bit.ly/consultweek, or you can scan the QR code. We'll also send the link in the chat. But last chance to get a free boot camp spot, so don't miss that. Okay, people continue to trickle in. Let's get started. This is office hours. We've got some amazing experts. I am excited to learn from you three tonight. If we get a lot of questions about recordings for this week, we will be sending out the recordings. Just make sure that you've created a free account on Leland. That is the way that you get access to the recording. So we'll send the link to sign up in the chat. Just make sure you have signed up for Leland. You have a free account if you want access to these recordings. Okay, agenda for today. We'll do some quick welcome and introductions, but we'll spend the majority of the time in this open Q&A session. Hopefully you've come with questions. This is your time to kind of get the personalized answers that you maybe weren't able to in the other sessions. Again, we have some awesome experts to introduce you to today. Quick welcome and introductions. My name is Amelia. I run content at Leland. It is my job to help you get access to the information that you need to land your consulting job, do whatever you need to do to reach your goals. You will also see Erica, Amanda, Elise here. Huge shout out to them. They are the reason that we are able to host these free events. There's so much work that goes into them. So thank you, all of you guys, for putting in the work to set up these events. The real stars of the show, though, are our coaches here tonight. Casey, I would love to have you introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, happy to start. Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Lane. I am located in Chicago, actually still just north of Chicago in Evanston, because I'm finishing up the second year of my MBA at Kellogg School of Management. So certainly for recruiting through the MBA pathway, I'm very close to that process as I went through it just last year. I guess 2 years ago, but I will be returning to BCG in just a few months. And this past year at Kellogg had the chance to lead a lot of our consulting recruiting training. So about 200 Kellogg students go through that training, and I got to be one of the leaders that helped lead those sessions each week, which was really fun. My background's a little non-traditional. I started in the corporate social responsibility space at an investment bank, so kind of working at that intersection of business and social impact. And then, pivoted into consulting through the MBA program. So yeah, excited to be here tonight and answer questions that you guys might have.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey. You can scan these QR codes too on the screen if you'd like to see their profiles. You can set up a free intro call with any of these coaches and anyone else that you've heard from on Consulting Week. Chat with them, see if it might be a good fit for a coach. We will also send their links in the chat if you don't have your phone up. Okay, Alex, take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex. So excited to be here with you today. My path to consulting was not the normal path, and so I'm really glad that Casey's here. She just went through the MBA process, but personally, that wasn't my route. So I was in the Air Force for several years and decided that consulting was a good fit. I think it's important to ask if it's the right fit for you. And I decided it was, did some non-traditional recruiting and networking, was able to get a spot at Bain. I was there for about 2.5 years. Interviewed many candidates and went through that process with them. So I know what Bain is looking for and am excited to use that experience to hopefully help you find your best spot. I think it's really important to just take it one step at a time. I know this process can be overwhelming. I'm sure this has been a busy week for all of you, but excited to help however I can.
Thanks, Alex. I love the perspective of, we've got quite the variety of perspectives, which I think will be awesome for this. Priyanka, finish us off.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Priyanka Prakash. I'm the Vice President and Head of Finance, M&A, and Strategy for our digital health business at RadNet, where we serve over 10 million patients every year. Prior to that, I worked at McKinsey, New York for a very long time. And pre-business school, I actually was a professional classical musician for about 8 years, having done over 250 concerts across the world. So I will tell you this, that if some of you come from a non-traditional background, that is a badge of honor, and that is something that you should be really proud of. I have coached specifically in this space, both in terms of consulting networking as well as, specific, how do you really crack, the consulting interview for almost a decade, both through business school, which is a more traditional kind of career path, as well as for laterals, trying to move into management consulting straight from industry. So great to be here with my co-panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So much expertise. Excited to get into some of these questions. You know us a little bit. We would love to hear from you. What was your favorite part of Consulting Week? This will also help us make sure that we have the best sessions possible in future Consulting Week. So please go ahead and send it in the chat so we can see. Keep them coming. We would love to see. I will make you sit here in silence until I get at least one person to answer me. So come on, someone tell us what your favorite week was. Or if this is your first Consulting Week event, also helpful for us to understand. Seeing a live case, yeah. Open access to the experts. Oh, I think we actually don't have open chat on. Everyone is sending me these messages. Okay, cool. Seriously, guys, open access to experts is the thing. I love Leland for that particular reason. It is so incredibly amazing. It is such an incredible resource to be able to talk to people who actually sat on the other side of those case interviews, who have been in the room, who understand, who have walked this path and can help you walk it as well. This is my second favorite part of Leland, maybe tied for first, is that just seeing you guys win. It is so, like, we are so rooting for you. We are so on your team. We at Leland, all of the coaches that you work with, this is the best feeling in the world to see you guys. OMG, just got a BCG offer. I'm interning at Kearney this summer. Seriously, we like to say that when you work with a coach on Leland, when you do anything at Leland, you draft an entire team on your side, because we're rooting for you and we want you to win, and we're here to give you the resources and the support that you need to do that. Let's dive into the Q&A. This is gonna be great. So we're using this thing called Slido. So go ahead and scan that QR code. We will also send the link in the chat. Go and submit your questions, and also see what questions other people have submitted. You can upvote other people's questions. This will help us prioritize the questions that are the most needed. So we just sent that link. Go in there, submit your questions. We've got a couple to start off with. I'll leave it up for about 20 more seconds. You can scan it if you haven't already. It looks like someone has already started sending some questions. So get your questions in there, upvote others that you also have, and we'll get some of these answered. Let's start with some of the most frequently asked questions that we've got this week so far. I think a big one is, am I doing enough? And that is often, how many hours a day should I be preparing for consulting interviews? Let's say, like, in the thick of your prep, in the months leading up to peak kind of recruiting season. Priyanka, what would you say is like the adequate amount of prep, or what's like a bar that I should be comparing myself to know whether I'm doing enough?
Yeah, great question. I kind of look at this as phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is networking to land an interview, and phase 2 is once you have either received the interview invite or you are pretty close to that, then you really get into the thick of interview prep. And phase 1 and 2 overlap a little bit, but I like to separate it because it's two different activities involved. When you're networking, which is phase 1, instead of number of hours, I like to say that for every firm that you're targeting, talk to at least 1 to 2 people from those firms every week. So you can get to know the firm, they can get to know you, and you also know about what they're looking for. What does the recruiting process look like? So that's less number of hours, but more number of good quality conversations that you're having. This is especially relevant if you're moving over from industry and you need to drive this networking yourself. The second part, when you're actually doing interview prep, I would say that, again, I would say anything from a month before your interview. I would say try to do one case interview every other day. And while you're doing your case interview, practice your behavioral stories kind of consistently also every other day. So I'd say maybe one day prep for your case interview, the other day prep your stories for your behavioral interview. Do not ignore that. So I know I did not say number of hours, but I gave other metrics through which people can plan their timetable.
Yeah, I think that's actually a better way to think about it because number of hours doesn't correlate perfectly between individuals, right? What one person might get out of 2 hours, someone else might get completely different. So I think that's actually a much better way of looking at it. Casey, let me ask you kind of a follow-up question on there because I know when you're in a business school or you're recruiting from a more traditional path like that, you have a lot of peers and kind of people that are going through similar things. When you were preparing for interviews specifically, and you're doing a lot of practice case interviews, what percent are you doing with peers on your own versus with a coach? And do I need to be thinking strategically about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I did a ton of practice cases during the fall semester of business school leading up to the interviews, which were in January. A little bit conversely to what Priyanka was saying, in MBA, you're sometimes kind of doing the networking part and the case prep part at the same time because you really start the case prep maybe in October. So you really have to hit the ground running. I would say that my interviews kind of fell into three buckets. So the first one was with peers my same year who did not work in consulting previously, who were also new to casing. Though that mostly happened further down the line as they learned what they were doing and I learned what I was doing as well. A third of the cases were more from either those coaches through platforms like Leland or I kind of saw the second years at my business school as those coaches as well. Like they had that experience. They helped each other through the process the year before. So a third of it for me was that. And then I was fortunate to get a lot of cases from the firms offered as well. So that was maybe a third of them too. But by far, I think the most useful ones were the ones with the coaches or the second years because they're still close to the process. They know what best practices look like, and they're able to really sit with you and give you that feedback that you need. Whereas your peers are still kind of figuring it out too. And then the people at the firms are just so busy. It's so grateful them to I was grateful they gave their time, but they didn't have as much time as the coaches in second years did.
Yeah, thanks for that perspective. I think we've seen something similar of peers are great when you're learning how to case, like what's the structure? How do you even approach this? But when you continue down that road, you can kind of encourage not best practices, or you can encourage each other in the wrong direction sometimes when you don't actually know what the right thing is to do. That's helpful.
And actually, I'll note one more thing, which I think with a coach or a second year for me, but a coach is the version of this type of caser. You can work with them multiple times. So maybe when you're newer to your casing, and then a few weeks later when you've hopefully improved a little bit, and they can note where have you improved a ton and your work is really paying off versus where are you consistently struggling, and these might be those weaker spots that you need to be putting extra effort into. So I think having those multiple cases with one person over a few periods of time can be really valuable as well.
Cool. Yeah, that's helpful. Alex, this is a very, very common question that we see. To what extent do I need to tailor my resume to different firms? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, open to other thoughts from the great panelists. Really appreciate those strong answers. Fully agree with what they just said. And for the resume specifically, in my mind, the skills and experiences are essentially the same for different firms. So I don't know that it's worth the time required to go in and tailor resumes. That said, I think cover letters, it can be worth it. I don't think it's going to make or break your candidacy, but I also think it's a low lift opportunity to show that you care enough about that firm to go on their website. More importantly, as Priyanka said, to network with people that are at the firm to really understand how does that firm position itself against other competitors. And so you want to play up what is unique to that firm in the cover letter so they think that they're your number one choice. You want all of the consulting firms to think that. And I think one easy way to convey that message is to adjust the cover letter.
Yeah, that's great. I think cover letters too, I agree with all that. I think they also need to be pretty personalized to your background and your skills and what you've done. So it's kind of this bilateral fit of what is the consulting firm? Who are you? Where can we find that middle ground? Which is where the personalized, I think, help of a coach helps. Okay, we're going to jump over to we're getting a lot of questions and I want to make sure we get through some of these. The first one, Priyanka, I would like to go to you. I know you've done a lot of work with clients on networking strategies, which for consulting has to be way more strategic than for a lot of other industries. I think the question is, what are your favorite ways to approach consultants to even get your foot in the door to network? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, great question. Again, I think it varies depending on what your recruiting channel is. If you are going through B school, you have a very structured way, your, consulting club will basically, tell you that these are the events, and then they organize events where you can organically meet consultants that are already there. So once you're there, it's really about, so in that context, I would say focus on like, instead of trying to speak to 10 to 15 people, maybe have like a smaller number of really high value, conversations with people who are already there. And I would say typically in that structured setting, you'll have people from different offices who are huddling in different spots. And I would say like decide what office or practice that you are applying for before you go into any of these conversations, irrespective of whether you're going through a B school channel or not. So that's on the B school channel. If you are kind of trying to do this, say transfer through industry and like other means, LinkedIn is really the best way to reach out to people. I would say that, this seems very tactical, but every time I receive a LinkedIn request, if I see that 2-sentence blurb as something that is unique and something that is very specific to the individual that is sending me this request, who wants to talk about consulting or some other topic, that really makes an impact. So I would say kind of think about who are the people from the office that you want to recruit for, that, office or practice that you want to recruit for, that you think will be a good person for you to talk to, and be very thoughtful about how you reach out on LinkedIn and leverage your personal network. You probably have a friend of a friend that works at, at like McKinsey. Typically, when you work with us, we can organically kind of help you frame some of those connections. I usually make it a point to like introduce, folks that I work with to folks in my network and like friends of mine who work at other firms. So really leverage your network through LinkedIn and through organic, and try to find second and third degree connections where you can get introduced to people who work at these firms, and then go in with a very clear agenda for those 15 minutes. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's great. I love getting tactical. I think we need to get in the weeds here. Another strategy that I've seen for this is if you don't maybe have a friend of friend, or if you don't love the friend of friends, or if you've already used those connections, find people that have even one similarity to you. You know, maybe they graduated from the same school, or they played a sport that you play. There's a lot of information on LinkedIn profiles, and use that to your advantage. I have a follow-up question here, Priyanka. You said, and I'll go to you, but then Alex, Casey, if you guys have anything to add here. Once you have your foot in the door, once you have a conversation planned, Priyanka, you used the word high value conversation. When people approached you, what did a high value conversation looked at, or what kind of made the best coffee chats, the best networking calls stand out above the rest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I used to interview and then recruit for, consulting, the one thing that I always looked for is, did this person know about my firm? Did they know about the office or the practice that I'm in? And have they done their homework? And do they have a very clear reason for why they want to join my firm and my office or practice? And that reason can be either a personal reason because you want to stay in a specific city, or it can be a professional reason as well. Both of those are equally important. So one, have they really done their homework? Two, do they have like very specific questions? Not just, oh, can you tell me what a week in the life looks like? That's a great question. But the way that I would rephrase that, or, would be, can you tell me some of the most challenging projects that you've done, and why have they been challenging? And how has the firm and your team help you navigate such a challenging project and situation? Because I would like to learn more about how your team is set up. That is a much better way of asking the question. So I would say, those two things are what I remember the most from my time recruiting, which is have they done their homework, and are the questions kind of one level deeper than tell me about a week in your life?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you said that question, I was like, oh, that's so much better. It just sounds so much stronger. Another way that I've heard this explained is, well, first of all, don't ask anything that you can find the answer to online. There are so many articles and TikTok videos about a day in the life of a consultant at that kind of high level. And then I think the second thing, which is good for any interview ever, by the way, or any networking conversation ever, what can the person in front of you specifically, what can Priyanka on this networking call, what unique insight does she have that no one else has? What can she answer that not a single other consultant could? It's her specific team, her background, how she approached certain things. So focus on what the person uniquely in front of you can provide. I think that's great. Thank you, Priyanka, for your thoughts. Casey, Alex, any other maybe just like general tips about running these networking calls, having effective ones, what a high value conversation look like to you? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts related to that. I can say them quickly. So one, this is related to what Priyanka was just saying, but they drove the conversation. They didn't show up and say, "Hi, okay, what are we talking about today?" And I'm like, "Wait, you asked for this call, not me." So I think that's a big one is as she said, do your research, come in and drive the conversation. There's also an element of a personal connection that is built. So it wasn't just, it didn't feel transactional. It didn't feel like this was them checking a box, like, okay, I got one more coffee chat from that firm, so now I'm this much closer to the interview. Like it actually felt like you wanted to connect on a more personal level as well. And then finally, this was a tip that I heard last year when we were talking about coffee chat burnout, which can definitely be real in the consulting space after you're doing, dozens of these at times, is reframing the conversation from, okay, I have to do a coffee chat so I can meet this person so they can introduce me to another person and then I'm more likely to get an interview. And actually in your brain reframe it as, okay, I'm trying to explore this job that's really different and a little intense at times and takes a lot of time and energy, and I want to see if this is actually the right job for me. And so I'm going to talk to somebody who has worked in this space and can share their insights to understand if this is a good two-way fit. And so reframing it from a checkbox if I have to do this coffee chat to actually wanting to learn from the conversation can be really helpful, and that energy comes through during the conversation itself.
Thanks. These are such great tips. I think that coffee chats are this black box of things that you know that you need to do, but there's not much tactical information on them. So this is great. Alex, any thoughts to share?
Yeah, just one final follow-up. Want to build on the great advice that they just shared. In my mind, it's so meaningful when someone takes notes during the coffee chat, whether that's physical notes or mental notes. And I can always tell if after they follow up, they send a thank you note and they have a specific piece of guidance that I shared that was really meaningful for them, because the person that you're reaching out to, their time is extremely tight and very valuable. And so you want to show that you understand that and you really appreciate the sacrifice they're making. And ultimately, as Casey said, this isn't just to check the box. This is to build a long-term relationship. And I think the best way to do that is to be grateful and share specific guidance.
Yeah, that's so great, coaches. Thank you. Thank you for all that advice. Okay, we got another question. I'm going to rephrase it slightly. The question was, when is a good time to reapply? I didn't get an offer. I interviewed and didn't get an offer, and so I applied again. The specific question is around timing, but that differs, I know, depending on if you're an experienced hire, if you're coming from industry, if you're undergrad, if you're an MBA. So maybe let's rephrase it slightly to, if I applied and I didn't, and I got rejected, or I made it to an interview and then didn't pass there, what are my next steps? How do I think about improving my candidacy, finding the right connections, giving myself another shot? Do I need to wait a period? Can I go straight in? I'm going to leave this open to any of you that have a strong opinion here.
Yeah, maybe I can start. So this, I mean, I applied to the exact job that I got post business school during my internships. I got rejected, and then I did a great internship that I was really thankful that I did. And then reapplied, kind of redid my networking, and then in that networking kind of highlighted how I've grown and my experiences have evolved since then, and then reapplied for full-time and, got the job. So that is a very, very short period to get between getting, rejected and then reapplying. I think it was six to 9 months, Casey, between internship recruiting and then full-time recruiting, right? It was a bit longer ago for me when I graduated business school, but yeah, it was definitely under a year. And I think, you know, some of the nuances are like firm specific, but if you, you know, one of the things I did was to stay engaged with people I'd met through the recruiting process and kind of thanked them for the like asked for feedback. Sometimes you may receive, you know, and sometimes you may not receive feedback. Always great to stay engaged in a respectful way at a thoughtful frequency also. And then reapply. I think if there's something that all of these firms love to see, and that's resilience. And I think the fact that that you're staying engaged and you're interested, that really goes a long way. And I actually think it's a very strong position to actually come back from, to show that you have evolved and grown since the first time.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And as Priyanka mentioned, this is it's hard to answer across the board here because it's going to be very dependent on your firm, on what stage you're at in life, what your background is. This is something that I would highly recommend working with a coach, because they can kind of do a ding analysis and say, oh, maybe this is what's standing out as a red flag to me. Here's maybe what I would go and shore up and try again, or let's do a mock interview. Oh, that type of case wasn't so strong. So I think having an idea of maybe why you didn't make it, and then having a kind of a very thoughtful strategy on getting your foot back in the door that is customized to the firm that you want and where you're coming from is how you do that. But it's totally doable, as Priyanka mentioned. Okay, we've had some questions about non-target schools. So 2 questions. One is, how important is the university that we attend? And if I maybe didn't go to such a great university, do I need to go and get an MBA in order to get my foot in the door at a good firm? And then we had another question that's, if I'm coming from a non-target school, how do I kind of differentiate myself? So maybe let's have kind of a more some general advice on, if I'm coming from a non-target school, maybe I don't have a traditional major, or I do have a traditional major and a good test score, but I'm still not coming from a target school. How do I get my foot in the door? How do I get these firms to see me? Alex, any advice here?
Yeah, so I didn't come from a target school. So I think the first thing is, I'm a big believer in make them say no. Like, don't limit yourself and don't think I'm not good enough, I don't have the right background. Like, worst case, you get a no and you don't have any regrets or questions. So I think that's the first thing, is just go for it and see what happens. But to make it happen, you have to be strategic and you do have to network. And ultimately, the question that you need to answer is, can you do the job? Can you perform in front of a partner or the client, and will you be able to reflect well on the firm? And there are definitely ways to do that. What I did specifically was what we talked about already, was I found someone that went to my undergrad that was already at the firm and doing really well. And the same things we've been discussing, I built that relationship. I tried to play up some of the things I'd done well after school, some of the awards, some of the objective recognitions that I'd received, to show him that it's not just your average graduate from that program. But it's a little tough. I know we don't always want to brag about ourselves, but you need to be credible to the person you're reaching out to. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give you, is whether it's a coach or if it's more of an organic search through LinkedIn, I do think it's really helpful to have someone that can open the door for you and that can help get you in. So it is tough coming from a non-target school, but it's not impossible. I think the firms are becoming more and more open to different backgrounds. And so you want to find that person, and then you want to show objective criteria, credentials that will communicate your ability to do the job.
I love that. Yeah, I want to reframe what you said, because I think it's really important. If you don't come from a target schools are target because they have direct pathways into these firms. And so if you're not coming from a target school, it means the avenue into the firm is what you need to find. And you do that by everything that we've talked about. It's by really strategic networking and showing that you can do the job and making sure that you are giving yourself the chances. I love what you said, Alex. Don't discount yourself. Especially the women on this call, it is very easy to say, oh, I have no shot, so I'm not even going to try. No, you have a shot. You can do this. So give yourself the best shot that you can. Okay, Casey, I love this question. Someone asked, what is the one thing you would say can make a person stand out other than being genuine? And maybe let's make this a non-obvious thing. So not a, a stellar resume or good casing skills. What's kind of a cherry on top, something that can kind of differentiate yourself from the crowd?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might answer that both in the networking category and then maybe in the case interview category, because those are different moments. I think for the networking category, one thing that I really have noticed at a lot of the networking events, especially, is how you're interacting with the other people around you. So if you're at a networking event, if you're the one who's talking the whole time, talking over people, interrupting, a lot of consulting is all about teamwork. And so that's an opportunity to show, how you might be on a team. And that might be a little bit more specific to MBA recruiting, where there are a lot of those big events that you're networking with a bunch of people all in one night. I think in the interview itself, we like to say at Kellogg, you don't have to be phenomenal at every single part of the case. You need to find a few spots where you know that you're going to spike and then be good enough in all of the other areas to get passable in those spots. So I think finding your spike areas is really important, and that can help you stand out. But what's even more important, in my opinion, is the energy that you bring to the case, the coachability that you bring to the case. If you do a math problem wrong, I'm not immediately going to say that you failed the interview. It's more if you do it wrong and I start helping and directing you and you are either stubborn or just get, totally blown off course because of it, you're hoping to evaluate someone that you are looking at and saying, could I work with them? If they were in my team and we had a client deadline coming up, is this someone that I would want to be working with? And there's going to be highs and lows in those teamwork moments at all times. So I actually think the energy and the resilience that you bring into the case is almost more important than being perfect at every single part of it.
I love that. This is so important, I think, and it's an area that I believe is often skipped over. Everyone has probably heard of the airport test here. If you haven't, it's the common thing that when you're going through consulting specifically, the way that they're looking at you is would I like this person if I was stuck in an airport with them for 8 hours? Would we get along? Would I enjoy being around this person? And Casey, I think that's so important for the interview. The case interview is a unique interview because you are simulating what the job would actually be like, right? So I think when you're in that room, the consultants are thinking, how is this person acting? If I brought them in on my team, this is how they would likely be. Is it someone that I think would bring value to the team? Is it someone that I enjoy being around? Is it someone whose energy I think would benefit positively the team? I think that's an excellent perspective.
Yeah, and I'll just add, that's what's going to make you stand out and be memorable. A lot of people are going to give pretty much the same framework, do the math about the same way at about the same speed, but it's the energy that you leave them with that's going to make you be remembered compared to the, 5 or 6 cases that somebody's giving in one day to multiple candidates.
That's great. Priyanka, Alex, both of you have sat on different sides of this table. Anything to add that in your mind have kind of made the best of the best applicants stand out from the rest?
Alex, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to go first. The first thing that comes to my mind is confidence. And I think it's a very stressful situation, so it's understandable to have nerves, but I'm always impressed when people act like they're already doing the job, or like they act like it would be an easy yes for me to push them to the next round. And so to do that, I think the mindset that you build going into your interview is as important as the technical, tactical skills. You want to set yourself up for success. So in that interview, you can come across as comfortable, confident, ready to crush the job. So there are different ways you can try to build that confidence. I think practice is a great one. I also think it's important to reflect on what are your strengths and weaknesses. Where do you spike? Just like Casey said, try to be really strategic about your preparation. And then once you've done all the possible preparation, just enjoy the interview, have fun, bring the energy, just like Casey said, and you will stand out.
Love that. Priyanka?
I think both of those were great. The only thing I'll add is I would also usually like to see, how comfortable is somebody at handling ambiguity or at handling a curveball. Now, do not expect every interview to have a curveball. Of all the interviews I gave, maybe, 2 of them out of, 10 interviews, or like one to two of them did have like genuine, curveballs. But I think both through your personal stories and the case, if you can demonstrate that you are comfortable with ambiguity and willing to work and navigate through an ambiguous situation, which is what you do a lot on the job, that is a more subtle thing that as an interviewer, I would try to gauge.
Yeah, that's great. These are so good. This is important, I think, because even if there isn't a specific curveball, a traditional curveball in the interview, there is more often something that you don't know or something that you have a question about, or yeah, a moment of ambiguity. Priyanka, if you had to kind of briefly explain, what do I do if I'm in that case interview and I'm hitting something where I feel stuck, and generally I know what I'm doing, I've practiced, but this is maybe something that I don't know, or that is a little bit more of an ambiguous area. What can I do to make sure that I'm navigating this in the right way?
Yeah, great question. So this happens a lot, and which is why I think, like we've said earlier, it's important to kind of practice with somebody that has also gone through this, so we can identify some of these patterns. If you do get stuck, I would not do, I'm stuck and I'm just going to, give up, and give off that vibe, even if you're not actually saying that. But instead, I would make sure that I remain really calm, because they want to see that you're calm under pressure. And I would say something like, it appears that I have hit a roadblock. I understand that the next step where we want to take this problem solving is X, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time making the leap from here to here. This is the path that I think we should take. Wondering what your thoughts are or your feedback is on that approach. So it says that, look, you're admitting that you're stuck, but you're also offering a potential solution to that problem, to try, to effectively make the interviewer bring them into your fold and kind of partner with you to help you get from point A to point B.
And that's the key, right? You work on a team in consulting, right? So I am going to bring these people. I am great at what I do, but all of us are not going to be perfect all the time. So when I don't know what, I'm going to bring you in. Let's rub shoulders. Let's do this together. I think that's great. And again, it comes back to this idea that you guys have already mentioned of, you are simulating a real interview. How are you going to act here? How you act there is how they think you're going to act in the job. Alex, I love what you mentioned of like, you should be having fun, because it is the job that you are signing up for, is that interview. We have dropped their links in the chat. Again, if you want to work with any of them on your case interview, getting your resume checked, understanding how to network and building kind of a reapplicant or an application strategy that's a little bit more personalized to your background and where you're trying to go, highly recommend setting up an intro call and just seeing if there might be a fit on both sides there. Also, make sure to sign up for that giveaway. If this is a couple people messaged me that this is their first event. I will go through this fast and then we will get right back to the Q&A. These boot camps, guys, are so good. I just finished one myself. We pretty much went to the table and said, how can we condense the most amount of information in the fewest sessions possible, get you guys the most value, the biggest bang for your buck, and it is this boot camp. It is like an intensive kind of crash course on all of the foundational skills that you need in order to navigate this landscape, getting the networking strategy, getting your resume in place, how to do these games and case robots assessments that a lot of these firms are doing now, case math, how do you do brainstorming and data insights, behavioral interviews, get your PEIs ready for McKinsey and everything else. It really is kind of every step getting those foundations in place. This is a lot of value. We do a lot. You even get set up with peers to do mock interviews, so you don't have to go out and find people yourself, which is super valuable and important, as we've talked about. Case drills, access to Leland Plus, which has something like 50 mock interviews, I think, in there, something crazy. So a ton of value in here. Again, we're giving away a free spot tonight. So there's no reason not to go and sign up to get a free spot. We're excited to have you in our cohort. Someone here will get it. Please make sure and go and do that before the end. Okay, back to our questions. We've had quite a few people ask, what are GPA cutoffs to receive an interview? Most of you recruited post-undergrad, but I think in undergrad, it's also ACT, SAT scores. Maybe let's broaden the question a little bit and say, is there a specific cutoff? If so, how sharp is it? And then if I don't fit in maybe that bucket, what do I do? Anyone have an opinion here? This is also highly customized to office and firm and all of the things. So it's also something that you should kind of talk one-on-one with someone. Alex?
Oh, go ahead, Alex. I'll go after you.
No, I was just going to say, I'm not aware of any specific cutoffs. So I think it's more just building that network, building the champions in the office that when they see your resume, they can flag it to HR, say, this person is going to be great regardless of a GPA or anything like that. I would also say just focus on what you can control. Like you can't change your GPA, but you can do great work now to show that you're going to be an all-star at whatever firm you land at in the future. So I'll pass it to you, Casey.
Yeah, I was going to reiterate something similar to that. I also don't believe there was a specific cutoff from the firms that I interviewed with. I do think it's like everything else in this process. It's one component of a very holistic overview of who you are as an individual. And that's everything from what your undergrad GPA was to how you showed up in your coffee chats to how you did on their case bot to how you show up the day of the interview. So it's definitely not something, in my opinion, that would be you're officially knocked out no matter what. I think it's something they'll look at alongside dozens of other factors about you.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, I don't think it's a lot of master's degree programs will give you the class profile or the specific ranges that they accept. No, none of these firms do that. I love the point about leading with those relationships. For schools specifically too, if there's a recruiting team for a school that you're at, I had one consultant say they would have a stack of resumes from that school, and then all the consultants that were on that team would sit around and talk about each of the applicants. And if someone had a relationship with one of those applicants, that's their time to say, hey, I talked to this person, they seem great, let's give them a shot. And so really having that relationship, having advocates in the room, as both Casey and Alex mentioned, is so important. And that can start pretty early, right? If you're waiting up until the last deadline, then it becomes much easier to get put in that transactional relationship that Casey mentioned is not what you want to go for. Okay, we've only got a couple more minutes. We'll touch on a couple more questions. Again, make sure to do that bootcamp giveaway. This is your kind of last chance to do that. The question is, what makes an early career resume attractive, particularly if you're not from a target school or company? I'm going to broaden this again to what, if I don't have a lot of experience, what makes a good resume stand out? Maybe from a non-target school, but also from a non-traditional, maybe if I didn't do strategy or I didn't do some of these more traditional career paths into consulting, how can I translate my experience? How can I make sure that my resume stands out and kind of gets my foot in the door? Priyanka, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah. I do actually. So I graduated business school at 25. So I started business school at 23, which is, it's ridiculously early, which also means that that I definitely know that my more experienced, classmates struggled less with networking and recruiting that I did because they just were wiser because they had more years of experience, right? But, I went into business school, went into consulting recruiting with less than 2 years of post-undergrad work experience. And I was, and then like I'd also mentioned, I had a second career where I was doing classical music full-time. So I did not let the few years of work experience kind of hold me back, but instead, what I highlighted was specific projects and like very unique teams that I worked with in my pre-MBA job. And I spent a lot of my time when I was networking to get, whether it's like a McKinsey interview or like any of these other interviews, I really highlighted the fact that I brought a lot of experience from a non-traditional area, which is classical music. Having something like that, which is different, is actually something that you should be very proud of, because the kinds of ups and downs, the resilience and the kind of like leadership and working with ambiguity, working with a team, all of, the sheer discipline, the work ethic that you need, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in sports, whether it's in any of these non-traditional pieces, those are all attributes that are directly applicable into the job. So when, I still distinctly remember one of my final round McKinsey interviews. We spent about 40 minutes of the interview talking about like one specific incident in my classical music journey, which was like a failure of huge proportions, and then how, essentially like I rebuilt my entire career from that. And then he basically had like 15 minutes to do the case. And then, so that's, so that's the kind of like organic conversation that some of these backgrounds lend themselves. So what I would say is that if you come from a non-traditional background, or if you have like, fewer years of work experience like what I did, really think about how can you translate those experiences into things that are relevant for the job? How can you talk about leadership? How can you talk about working with different types of people? How can you talk about how you're thinking quick on your feet, which you have to do as a sports person, as an artist, etc. How do you deal with ambiguity, which you do in an enormous way? Again, if you come from a non-traditional background, how do you do more with less resources, which you do if you worked in like nonprofit before? All of these are traits like, so I would say that practice your stories and structure your stories in a way that you're able to get these across. And again, like, I think like the more number of people that get to hear your story, I think it would just make it more impactful. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this topic. And again, I will just say that it's a huge badge of honor to come from a non-traditional background. By no means is it a weakness.
Yeah, I love that. Something you said at the end, I think is super important, that your experiences are likely so much more comparable to the skills required in consulting than you think. Like so much of what you do, as you mentioned, nonprofit, government, startups, product management, anything that you've done, you can likely translate in a way that shows consultants that you can do the job. And sometimes it takes a little bit of creativity. I also think working with someone who's been in the firms and knows what skills and can help you kind of tweak them into a format, into a framework that makes sense for these firms is helpful. But you have the experience likely. It's just about how you tell the experience, how you tell your story. And I also loved what you mentioned, Priyanka, with the classical music, because you are a human. At the end of the day, they don't want to work with a robot. They want to work with a colleague. They want to work with a human. And so you don't need to come off as this perfect, polished consultant already, right? You are a human, and those are ways that you can connect and build a real relationship. That's great. This is our last Consulting Week event. We got through a ton of questions. There are a lot on here. I'm sorry we did not get to everything. If you have remaining questions, highly recommend you to book an intro call and get your answers, get your questions answered by these pros. You can get that one-on-one, which is pretty amazing. I would like to give each of you coaches if there's kind of one last tip or one last piece of advice, something that you want to leave everyone on this event, on Consulting Week, from Consulting Week in their recruiting and in the coming months, what's kind of the last thing that you would like them to leave with? Casey, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I would say consulting recruiting is challenging. It's challenging for a reason, because the job is challenging. And so almost the first bar of if you would be good at this job is, were you willing and able to put in the effort and the time and the practice to even get to the interview stage and succeed at that interview stage? But that being said, everybody is capable of succeeding at this job, I guess, at the interview process, just by putting in that time and that energy. And you have so many resources at your disposal to do that. And so it really is just being committed, taking advantage of the resources in order to let your best capabilities shine through, whether that's a traditional or a non-traditional background. As Priyanka said, you have those skills. It's just about getting them visible to the firms and showing that you're willing to put the work in to get to that point. So really excited for all of you. It's not the easiest process, but it's extremely rewarding.
Thanks, Casey. That's great. It's a great last reminder. Alex, what is your last piece of advice?
Yeah, just two if I can quickly. The first is lower the stakes. It is not McKinsey, BCG, or Bain or bust. I think there's too many candidates that feel like their life is going to be over if they don't get into one of these big firms. And as a result, that makes them more stressed, more nervous in the interviews. And so I have amazing friends who have crushed it at Deloitte, other firms, and they've been extremely successful in those firms, but also after. So please try to lower the stakes so it's not as stressful of a process. And the second one is that your mindset is as important, I think actually more important than the tactical skills that you develop. I just have seen too many people that I've coached that are amazing. They know how to do the case math. They have great structures and frameworks. And then they get in the final round and they're just so nervous that they're their own worst enemy. And so I think as much as possible, really try to set yourself up for success ahead of time. Think about how much sleep you need to get, what food, what nutrition, exercise, like all of the basic things become so critical in those high stress, high performance moments. So just try to lower the stakes and then set yourself up mentally to perform to your best.
I love that. Great advice. Priyanka, bring us home.
This is an overwhelming process, so break it up into smaller parts and take it step by step. You got this.
Oh, I love that. Such good. What a fantastic way to end Consulting Week. Casey, Priyanka, Alex, thanks so much for all that advice. That was so great. Our giveaway winner is Ishan Mehta. Thanks for being here. We are so excited to have you in our cohort. We'll send you an email with all the details. Thank you for everyone else that submitted that form. I believe you get a 50% discount or something crazy for being at Consulting Week. It should be at the end of that form. So even if you didn't win a giveaway this week, highly recommend signing up for the boot camp. It seriously is so valuable. We bring in the best of the best coaches. It is an awesome time. Highly recommend you sign up. Okay, to wrap up, if you wouldn't mind me in thanking our coaches in the chat. They are here of their own volition. They're spending their Thursday afternoons helping you land these jobs. Casey, Priyanka, Alex, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and your experience. We have sent we'll continue to send out you should get an email, I think, with their profiles. You can also scan those QR codes. We've sent the links a couple of times. It is so valuable to have someone in your corner that has been where you want to be, that knows what this process is like, how challenging it can be, the mental toll that it can have. So Alex, Priyanka, Casey, can't thank you enough for being here and for sharing your time. And thank you everyone else for joining us for Consulting Week. This is always one of the most fun weeks of the entire year. And again, to reiterate, we're just rooting for you. We are so excited to watch you ace these interview processes, to reach your goals, to land those jobs. If you do get in, please send us a note. Send me an email, send Leland an email. We want to celebrate you. We want to hype you up. And we're here to give you the resources that you need to do that. So thank you everyone. Have a great rest of the night. It looks like there's another session right after this, how I landed my McKinsey offer in 2 weeks. We just sent the link to that, so go ahead and join for that. Thank you everyone. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks.